In the early hours of May 20th, a retired man named Jerry Jackson stopped on a bridge over the Grand Marais Canal outside Jennings, Louisiana, and leaned over the rail to see what had snagged against the bank. At first, he thought it was trash caught in weeds. Then he saw the flies and the fixed shape beneath them, and his stomach tightened. A human arm floated beside blue denim. Jackson backed away from the railing and called 911 with a voice that didn't sound like his own. Deputies arrived fast, then detectives, then more cars, until the shoulder became a crowded line of uniforms and clipboards. They photographed the canal off Highway 1126, marked the spot, and watched as the body was pulled up onto the bank. The remains had been in the water long enough that answers came slowly. Fingerprints identified her as Loretta Lynn Chason Lewis, 28, last seen alive on May 17th. Toxicology later showed drugs and alcohol in her system, but the decomposition left investigators without a definitive cause of death. In the first days, officials talked around it, careful with language, as if the right wording could keep panic from taking root. In Jennings, people heard what mattered anyway. A young woman had been left in the canal like she didn't count. Less than a month later, on June 18th, the call came again. Ernestine Daniels Patterson, 30, had been found in another canal, this one off Highway 102. She had been last seen on June 16th. This time the body told investigators something they couldn't soften. Her throat had been cut. 2 deaths in waterways around a town of roughly 10,000 stopped feeling like bad luck. It felt targeted, deliberate, like someone understood that a canal could erase footprints, wash away fibers, and swallow the minutes between a disappearance and a discovery. For a while, nothing changed on the surface except the town's attention to every ditch and bridge. Patrol cars rolled, drug arrests were made, people went to work, went home, and watched the canals whenever they crossed a bridge at night. The women most at risk kept moving through a narrow world of cheap motels, back porch parties, and rides traded for favors. Many of them knew each other, sometimes by blood and sometimes by survival. In Jennings, everyone knew the sheriff's office leaned on informants to map the local drug trade, and everyone knew what happened when an informant became inconvenient. That knowledge didn't show up in press releases, but it lived in the way people lowered their voices when they spoke names. On March 18th, another body was found. A fisherman spotted the remains of Kristen E. Gary Lopez, 21, in a canal off Highway 99. She had been last seen on March 6th. By then, families weren't just grieving. They were measuring time, counting days between disappearances and recoveries, trying to understand how a killer, or killers, could keep using the same landscape as a dump site without being seen. Again, the condition of the body meant the autopsy couldn't provide clean answers. When a body came out of water after days, sometimes weeks, the evidence came out with it, blurred and broken. In a case like this, every lost hour mattered, and Jennings kept losing hours. 2 months later, on May 12th, Whitney Charlene Dubois, 26, was found at an intersection of secluded dirt roads. She had been last seen on May 10th. The pattern widened beyond canals and into rural stretches where a body could be dropped and left for days. People who lived on the south side of Jennings heard the news and recognized the message. Whoever was doing this understood the map of the parish as well as any local deputy did, and understood which victims would be talked about like a nuisance before they were talked about like a person. As the deaths piled up, so did stories about what investigators did and didn't do. People noticed who got questioned and who didn't. They noticed when leads died quietly. In later reporting, one detail became a symbol of how badly trust had frayed. An investigator bought a pickup truck from an inmate connected to the case. A witness later said she had seen Kristen Lopez in that truck on the day she disappeared. By the time that information surfaced, the truck had been washed and resold. Families heard that and felt the ground shift under them. Even if it wasn't proof of anything by itself, it sounded like the kind of mistake you didn't make when you believed the victims mattered. The case split the town into camps. Some believed a serial killer was hunting women who were easy to isolate and hard to advocate for. Others believed the deaths were tied to the drug trade and the men who controlled it. And beneath both theories was another, spoken softly in kitchens and on porches, that certain women had seen something they weren't supposed to see, and that the people with power in Jefferson Davis Parish had reasons to keep the truth buried. The whispers didn't come from nowhere. They came from the way rumors clung to specific names, from the way some witnesses said they were pressured, and from the way the official story never seemed to move forward, no matter how many times the town circled back to the same questions. On May 29th, Laconia Chantel Muggy Brown, 23, was found in South Jennings after being last seen on May 27th. Like Ernestine, her throat had been cut. The brutality was plain, and so was the timing. 3 years after the first discovery, bodies were still appearing, and the town had learned the grim rhythm. A woman vanished, the days stretched, then someone found her where the roads emptied out and help arrived too late. The fact that Muggy was found on pavement, not hidden in water, made it feel like a challenge. It forced the town to picture the moment of disposal in a place where headlights passed and houses sat close enough to hear a door slam. On September 11th, hunters found another body, this one in a dry irrigation canal. Crystal Shea Benoit Zeno was 24, last seen August 29th. Authorities concluded she had been asphyxiated. 2 months later, on November 15th, searchers found Brittany Gary, 17, still a teenager, after she had been missing since November 2nd. 7 women had been discovered between May 2005 and November 2008. Most were found decomposed. Most offered little forensic evidence. Each recovery deepened the same questions: who had been with them last, who had watched them disappear, and why the answer never solidified into an arrest that held. In December 2008, Sheriff Ricky Edwards announced that a multi-agency task force had been formed, drawing on federal, state, and local law enforcement. It sounded like an escalation, like a promise that the killings were finally being treated as connected. But by then, trust was already damaged. Families had heard witnesses talk about corruption and drugs and intimidation. They had heard that some of the women had worked with law enforcement as informants, and that being useful to the police hadn't protected them when they started asking the wrong questions or carrying the wrong secrets. Whatever the task force did behind closed doors, the families had learned not to confuse activity with accountability. The nickname stuck because it was easier than saying 7 full names out loud and admitting the town still had no answers. The Jennings 8. The Jeff Davis 8. It made the case sound like a single mystery with a single solution, when the truth might have been uglier and more complicated. In August 2009, the body of Nicole Jean Guillory, 26, was found along Interstate 10 in nearby Acadia Parish, and the series that many people had hoped was over proved it wasn't. The task force kept working, the rumors kept living, and the families kept staring at the same canals, waiting for someone, anyone, to tell them what really happened in the places where Jennings stopped looking. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.